Welcome to Drill Down Earnings. We have quarterly results out from Microsoft. This was quite the quarter, fiscal 2026 Q1 numbers from the company. I'm Cory Johnson, Chief Market Strategist for Epistrophy Capital Research. We look at the 50 most important companies in technology and try to tell a business story behind the stock on the move. The stock's moving down. I thought the numbers were good. Let me tell you about these numbers, and you can tell me if you think this is what the stock should be doing. The expectations were $75 billion in revenue, $75.4 billion. They did $77.7 billion. So better than expectations, as well as better than expectations in terms of earnings per share of nearly $4 a share, $3.72 GAAP on a GAAP basis, non-GAAP $4.13. So strong earnings from the company. And strong growth. In fact, revenue growth is accelerating at 18%. So let's go a little bit deeper and try to understand what's happening on a product level and with the rest of these results. Then you can tell me if you think the stock should be up or down right now. I don't have any kind of position here, but I think it's worth looking at the changing nature of Microsoft, and you can see it in these Q1 2026 numbers. So 3 business units they report these days. Productivity and business processes, that's essentially Microsoft Office. Some LinkedIn is tossed in there as well. Intelligent cloud, that's what everyone's really excited about, mostly Microsoft Azure, as well as some other products in there. And then personal computing, which is essentially Xbox and Microsoft Windows, mostly Microsoft Windows. So let's look into this here. So the segment that grew at, that was 18% of revenue, or sorry, productivity, 42% of revenues, still the biggest part of their business is indeed that productivity and business processes. And that's Microsoft 365, as I mentioned, LinkedIn, Dynamics 365, they call it. That was up 17%, up to $33 billion. Kind of nice growth there, and that business is really picking up. But the real exciting story here is what's happening in their cloud business. Yes, it's the second biggest cloud business they have at 40% of revenues, but that's going to change real quick here, maybe even next quarter. It might be the biggest business they have, driven by Microsoft Azure. So while the overall sector of intelligent cloud grew at 28%, I said in English, Azure grew at 40% on a year-over-year basis. The fastest pace we've seen in 6 quarters from this company. AI workload migrations moving to Microsoft Azure, expanded inference infrastructure work that they're doing, a broad diffusion, they said in their press release, of AI across industries. It's a key driver for them. And their intelligent cloud business also growing at 28% as overall. Demand for Microsoft's OpenAI stuff that they've got at Azure, as well as there are other distributed cloud offerings. And while Amy Hood, the CFO, terrific CFO, talked about gross margin improvement at the same time as they saw this fantastic growth, she also talked about higher utilization and efficiencies in networking and storage, even as they increase the capital expenditure. They say it's going to remain elevated. You've been warned. But their personal computing business growing only at 4%. I think that's really notable. That's Windows, of course, as well as search actually growing at 16% within that, but Windows growing at 6%, Xbox only 1%. It really shows how it's hard to imagine this, but for Microsoft, Windows is really of declining importance in terms of its overall percentage of revenues at this company. And you can see that over the span of the last 4 years, how that's just kind of shrinking at the expense of their Office business, yes, but also of what's happening in the cloud. Now, the market didn't like these numbers, didn't love these numbers, down about 2% in after-hours trading. But in the last year, the stock's up 25%, which is far outpacing the S&P 500, of which it's such an important component. And, again, their takeaway, the cloud business is just breaking away at 28% growth rates, so much better than the 17% and 4% of the other major divisions at Microsoft. Here's what CEO Satya Nadella had to say in the conference call.
The thing that we're doing is continually modernizing the fleet. It's not like we buy one version of the NVIDIA and load up for all the gigawatts we have. Each year you buy, you ride the Moore's Law, you continuously modernize and depreciate it. And that means you also use software to grow efficiency. I talked about, 30% improvement on both serving up GPT-4.1 and 5.0, right? That's software. That's and by the way, it's helpful on A100s, it's helpful on GB200s, and it'll be helpful on GB300s. That's the beauty of having the efficiency of the fleet. So keep improving utilization, keep improving the efficiency.
So there you have it from Satya Nadella. But what's it all mean? What's your big drill on earnings takeaway? And what's the one number that tells you a whole lot? I'll tell you all that. But please subscribe, follow this, click the button on your screen that Let you see all of our drill down episodes here from Epistrophy Capital Research. Really help us continue to provide these in the future. But your summary, Microsoft, Q1 2026 earnings for this company were pretty strong. Your essential summary, your drill down earnings takeaways, 18% revenue growth for this company. Really strong, accelerating in the last few quarters, even as they're spending a ton on CapEx to build out their cloud infrastructure. Revenue of $77.7 billion. Really nice growth there and really nicely profitable. Fantastic operating margins from this company, stunning, in fact. But I think the most important number, your drill down earnings bite, the one number that tells you a whole lot, is $30.897 billion in revenues in one quarter for their cloud business, driven by massive growth, 40% growth in their Microsoft Azure business. All right, thanks for checking out Drill Down Earnings. Look at our full reports on YouTube, and of course, you can follow us on all the socials. On X at Cory TV, you can follow me, but also follow all of our Epistrophy Capital work on TikTok, Instagram, and yes, on YouTube. I said at Drill Down Pod.